Hello everyone, I am Babla Jonathan welcoming you to this edition of The Inside on Equinox Television. Today we're going to analyze the increasing violence in the northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon, hit by socio-political and security tensions for close to 4 years. Today we will also look at the stakes of the upcoming regional elections after the President of the Republic, Paul Biya, signed a decree setting the pace for that election. Meet our guest in some few seconds. Our guest today is a senior statesman. Professor Paul NKWI is a member of the Constitutional Council of the Republic of Cameroon. Professor, you're welcome to the program.
Thanks for inviting me.
In the past weeks, there have been increasing violence in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. Most recently, the town of Bamenda was gripped by commotion and fear, gunshots in several parts of the town after the killing of a police inspector in the town. What's your analysis of this increasing violence in the Anglophone regions of the country?
I think both the stakeholders, especially the state and government, has attempted and continues to attempt to create a climate of peace in the two regions. And I think that since the Grand National Dialogue, the vision has been to ensure that people of those regions get what they want. And what they want is a climate of peace within which normal life can continue. But apparently it's not happening. It's not happening first and foremost for what I may say two basic reasons. The first reason is, as the struggle goes on, and as it happens in virtually conflict situation, is that there will be a group of people who profit from the instability to do what they want. So on the one hand, you have the state security system attempting to impose a certain amount of peaceful or quietening the region. And then on the other hand, the leaders of the struggle against the marginalizations of people of Northwest and Southwest. And then the third group are those who profit from the situation of insecurity to profit from it. They could be bandits. Take, for example, a few weeks ago, a group of people, well armed, probably they were identified, who walking into a microfinance bank and probably made away with cash.
In the town of Bamenda?
Yes, that is just one aspect. Then you also have people who kidnap individuals and request for ransom. So you have those three components. And attempts, therefore, to be able to neutralize, especially by the national security forces, to neutralize those two forces, creates a great situation of.
Other people also think that some government officials are also benefiting from the ongoing war, and they do not want it to come to an end. And so they attribute the fact that peace is not forthcoming, return to normalcy is not forthcoming in those two regions to bad faith. They think that the government authorities do not want to solve the problem.
Definitely, I would not attribute that kind of thinking to a couple of individuals who want to perpetuate the situation. But one fact is clear, is that enormous resources have been poured in resolving the crisis. And those resources, how are those resources distributed or spent? It eventually goes into private pockets. And probably those who profit from the situation who prefer to prolong the struggle. But to be honest with you, I strongly believe that the problem in the Northwest and Southwest cannot be resolved militarily. We need really serious dialogue.
And as we speak, there is a military operation going on in the northwest region of the country in particular, where the commander of the 5th Military Region, General Kamer, and the 5th Gendarmerie Region, General Ekongwese Divine, tracking down, killing and arresting separatist leaders, seizing weapons from them. That's a military solution that they're bringing to the problem, attempting to put an end to separatist activities in the ground. What do you think about this kind of operation?
I think if you realize that in the beginning of the struggle about 3 or 4 years ago, people who rose up against the state were arrested and brought and locked up in Yaoundé, and then Kondenga prison and all. And later on, the President of the Republic released a couple of them. I don't see people today, the army, the security that is out, where they are applying the rules of the law in a given conflict situation to arrest people and bring them. Apparently to me, it is my feeling, is that no more arrest and bringing the people to justice. The justice is now being executed. Military justice is being executed by the killing of all those separatist people they capture.
And the military thinks that that is going to restore peace and normalcy.
I don't
think. Because like the spokesperson of the communication department of the Ministry of Defense said that the military is there to restore peace, to restore normalcy. But is this kind of action restoring normalcy?
I think it is. It is the objective for both parties to restore peace. But if the military, by restoring peace, is to go and kill, right? You're not restoring peace. You are instead inciting those who may be willing to lay down their arms. Because I don't know how many, if you ask the military, how many people have been locked up in the prisons here who were picked up in the war zone. They were captured and they became war prisoners. How many of them over the last couple of years? What we are doing and what we are seeing is counting the dead, not the living. Maybe the living we may be counting are the people locked up in DDRC centers because they are voluntarily left and sought a different solution to the problem they have been fighting for.
In some of the solutions which you were highlighting earlier, brought by the government, some of the measures and the actions taken so far, and the last being the first meeting of the Major National Dialogue Follow-up Committee, which took place at the Prime Minister's office here in Yaoundé, and was chaired by the Prime Minister, in which the officials who met examined what has been done so far and strategized on how to go forward. All these measures have been described by opposition politicians as cosmetic measures which cannot solve the problem.
Well, the problem is, if government didn't do anything, those same politicians will still criticize them. Whatever they do, they can describe them as cosmetic. But the final thing is how effective the actions of government produce the required climate of change or climate of peace that is required. There is a number of people from the region who believe that open, honest dialogue with the people or with the guys on ground zero is fundamentally important. Because many people or many politicians or those who are seeking for a solution are saying, why don't we sit around the table? The concrete actions that were outlined recently by the follow-up committee really simply says we are making a step forward, but that we need to continue that. But the problem is, how do we continue that if we continue to
and that's the simple
harass the people and probably kill most of them? What happened in Boyo? We all know. They burned down houses. We are told 17 people were killed, probably more. But will that bring peace? But what people are expecting to see is saying, okay, how can we get this separatists or people fighting for the struggle on the dialogue table?
And that's the question that appears very difficult to be answered, because there is a problem of trust. There's a problem of trust, notably highlighted by politicians, opposition politicians, as far as government is concerned, because they are asking the question, but if the separatists were to leave the bushes and come to Yaoundé, for example, to meet and discuss with government officials, if the separatist leaders who are abroad were to come in and discuss, in case where there is no agreement, what will happen to them? Would they be allowed to go back to the US, to France, to the bushes in the northwest and southwest regions, or they will be arrested, detained?
You see, they have always said they are willing to come to the negotiating table in a neutral country, negotiated by a third person, because they themselves are afraid of their own security. But as far as I see things, is that they are ready. Government is ready, and they are also ready. But the problem is who should be the negotiator? Who will then guarantee at least the safety of the separatists? But let me say one thing. I still strongly believe that we have never, both government and probably government knows, address the fundamental roots of this current crisis. Well, all you need to go back to where we all came. The two Cameroons. Where did we come from? What were the issues that we raised? What were the visions we built for ourselves? Were we tricked or we failed to understand the roadmap that was defined for us? Because the struggle is basically saying the roadmap we defined for us and for this country, Cameroon, has along the line been manipulated. And the struggle is actually focusing on that manipulation and saying enough is enough. Let us redefine our future. Right now we are not defining our future. Take the process of decentralization. While the struggle because if we had, in 1996, after the promulgation of the present constitution, there were a number of provisions on how our future will be defined. We should have sat down and tried to implement that. Well, you all know that they said the constitution will be implemented progressively. And progressively, it has taken them 26 years to get to the decentralization issue. Probably we should have been improving on that decentralization issues rather than recreating it.
So what is the problem? Why is it taking too long to implement things that we agreed on and decided that, okay, this is how we're going to work, this is how we're going to do things, but things are not done that way according to what you're saying now, and rather things are taking other directions which were not in the initial plan of the nation.
No, I think what I'm saying is that the 1996 Constitution reshaped our vision, but that there was a failure to implement some of those constitutional provisions, because what we should have been dealing with today would have been improving the things we had put in place 20-something years ago. Probably there would never have been the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest province. By then, if you go back 22 years ago, we were supposed to have had regions, regional councils, right? Taken us 26 years to define the content and the nature of those regional councils, right? Why? The simple response to that is that politicians have their own agenda and they implement it when they want.
The agenda which is different from that of the nation? Is that what you're saying?
For sure, politicians who win an elections are entrusted with the future of the country. And they are responsible every 5 years to give an account of their stewardship. If after 26 years, that account of stewardship means the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest, they should be able to respond. That they entrusted them the future of Cameroon on their new constitution. 22 years, we have a crisis in the Northwest and Southwest. We did not put in place the councils, the regional councils, etc., etc. It is today. And therefore, those politicians are trying to catch up with lost time.
All right. In the meantime, people are being killed, both in the side of the National Armed Forces and the civilians. Homes being destroyed in the two Anglophone regions of the country. And at the same time, some government authorities are telling the people that the country or the two regions are gradually moving towards return to peace and normalcy. Do you think we are moving towards that direction?
I think it's the desire of all of us, both the separatists and government, to move to the direction of achieving total peace, period of normalcy. And I think is the desire of every household in the Northwest and Southwest.
Looking at what is happening,
yes,
and what is being done, are we moving towards that direction?
I think we are moving very slowly. But one thing, let me come back to a thing I should have said before, is that many people have failed to understand the power of culture. Because culture shapes our minds, shapes our being, and makes of what we are. And even pushes us even to die defending that culture. This is what this whole thing is all about.
What's the link between the crisis and culture?
That is the whole problem. The creation of the Commission for Bilingualism is what? It's an attempt to respond to one aspect of culture. The people who are fighting in Northwest and Southwest, they grew up, they were shaped, nurtured, and built into a culture which they are fighting to defend. On this other side, people are used to indirect rule. After the sous-prefect, the prefect, the sous-prefect, then the chief of the village. That is what they knew. When the power comes from those structures, people accept. But it wasn't the same on the other side, where we were taught that participation in governance was a critical component of success. The native authorities that were created, where the British did not rule by imposing on the chiefs, but they used the chiefs to achieve the purposes of governance. That's the culture we came in. The kind of education we received. In 1994, what happened? Attempt was made to suppress and to unify BAC and GCE. And the Anglophones fought to maintain the GCE. During the Grand National Dialogue, I served on I was a member of the Commission on Education. And one thing that came out very clearly is the unicity of the two systems. We come from different cultural niches. Take, for example, the appointments Let me just take the universities. In the Anglo-Saxon culture in which you and I were brought up, you don't appoint chancellors and vice chancellors. When the position is open, the commission for a search for a new vice chancellor is created. And that commission shortlists 3 people, because the commission meticulously interview a number of people, and each of the aspirants define their vision of where they want to take that university to. The commission then selects 3. And then whoever appoints chooses from those 3. Since the Grand National Dialogue, has that been done? Still continues. But we all agree that the 2 systems should continue to function. And the good thing that this is why I feel culture as a very, if we view things in that lens, things might change. Let me just complete this. Because in 1994, there was no backboard. Do you know that? There was no backboard. It was created as a consequence of the struggle by Anglophones to maintain the GCE board. And they found reason that there was some fundamental philosophy that inspired that kind of a GCE board. And they created the BAG. But you need to see how the BAG diplomas were organized or delivered at the time. They're different. This is where 2 cultures have come together, and they are learning from one another. And this is what the fathers of our unification had in mind. And I think midway along the line, things didn't go well.
Right, Prof, we're going to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week, the press review.
The Voice reports sad resurgence of hostilities in the crisis-hit northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. As reported by the Guardian Post, commotion gripped Bamenda after a police officer was shot dead in broad daylight. Another edition of the paper reports that the military shot down Bamenda after the killing of the police inspector. The Guardian Post goes further to highlight military excesses in the northwest and southwest regions, compiled by an international rights group. According to the Herald Tribune, the senior divisional officer of the NKWI division accuses funds and quarterheads of complicity with separatist fighters. He advocates for the rights of young girls victimized by the Anglophone crisis. In the post-weekender, a mayor tells government to appease separatist fighters for peace to return. In the midst of all these, the national president of the Cameroon People's Party, Kamer Edit, says the only solution is political transition through a peaceful protest of Cameroonians. But the Horizon reveals that this revolution is countered by the government. One of the giant companies badly affected by the security crisis is palm plantations, which the median reports is crumbling under the weight of difficulties and the helpless indifference of the Prime Minister. Reporting on floods hitting several parts of Cameroon, Eden projects reactions which indicate that focus on urban centers puts in peril rural areas and their needs. And the reporter reports the presidential couple's relief action touches flood victims. The Post writes that after wasting 1 billion francs CFA, government orders specialized COVID-19 treatment centers dismantled. The Sun focuses on the takeoff of the Limbe Modern Market 2 billion francs CFA project.
Thanks for staying with us. We are still with our guest, Professor Paul Kui, who is a member of the Constitutional Council of the Republic of Cameroon. Professor, what do you think about the idea that Anglo-Saxon culture, the French culture inherited by the other French-speaking regions of the country, should be abandoned? All of those cultures and ways of doing things inherited from the British and the French should simply be abandoned, and all Cameroonians should come together and build something Cameroonian and stop fighting over all these cultures inherited from the white man, so to speak.
That is possible, but I don't think it's workable, because for more than 50 years since independence, we have tried to maintain those two. And there is value in both. And the two systems can borrow from one another to be able to create something unique. Take the United States, for example. And I think they did a very good job. Because before they formed the United States, Louisiana was a French territory. Louisiana. New Mexico belonged to the Spanish, and it's part of the US. And some other parts, even what you call New York was New Amsterdam, was owned by the Dutch. But the United States, by creating the United States of America, took over and imposed a culture that unifies them. Today you have an American culture. They brought the British, the French, and the Spaniards. They tried to submerge that. And I think that probably when the head of state said during his last visit in Paris that attempts to suppress or to merge the Anglophones into a Francophone have failed. I think that was the beginning of a solution to our problem. And I think the president, through this year, if there is one politician who have seen the process to where it is today, etc., and probably that conclusion when he says we have failed to merge these Anglophones into the French system.
But since he said that,
no one seems to pay attention to that.
Nothing has
because
happened
that should have inspired whoever is up front to revise his own thinking. To say, yes, oh, the president, he is probably the longest serving politician in this country. And for him to have made that means he has understood where we come from. And this should have been the point, the meeting point for us to sit around the table and say, okay, my brother, we're sorry. Let us recreate a new Cameroon. Take in the first All-Anglophone Conference in Buea, one of the fathers of unification, or even the two of them, Muna and Foncha, they stood up and said, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. We are sorry, we didn't follow the process as we should have. That was the beginning. That was the signals that they who brought us to where we are saying something went wrong. Unless we address this honestly, without any prejudices, we will never solve this problem.
Ever since the President of the Republic made that statement during the Paris Peace Summit, later interpreted as a confession, confession of an assimilation attempt that failed, the actions taken so far by the government, do they correspond to that statement?
You see, I wouldn't say it's a confession. It's the end analysis of his own reflection. We simply say, this is where things are. Can we? And I think that is the message he was sending to his lieutenants. This is what we have attempted. And I believe that the creation of this commission for bilingualism was one of the outcomes. The language issue in this country, which is French and English, are critically important. And Cameroon emerged right from the very beginning as the leader of bilingualism in Africa. When he just stood up to propose Zongake as the Secretary General of the OAU, Organization of African Unity, everybody clapped. Even when Zongake left, Etikimboma came. Cameroon was the unifying force at the time. The unity of Cameroon at the time was going to be the basis on which the Pan-African movement would be based on. The issues of if you go back to Casablanca, I'm actually a supporter of Casablanca principles. The underdevelopment of Africa today, disrupted by the exploiters, the colonials, after the Casablanca bloc meeting, has led us to where we are today. Because the Casablanca bloc, what did they say? Let's unite together. And Cameroon was the first experiment. Senegambia joined. Senegal and Gambia. But completely disintegrated. But Cameroon was a man. We should have. We had a role in history and we failed to show the way to the rest of Africa.
And that unity is what seems to be very difficult to have today. The unity of Cameroon is seriously threatened by the ongoing crisis. We'll take some interviews now and we'll be right back in some few minutes.
After the brutal assassination of a lady in the city of Bamenda, after the brutal murder of teachers, abduction and wounding of students that were going to write their exams, some terrorist groups masterminded from abroad and whose connection is already identified in the Northwest region, in particular in Bamenda, have brutally assassinated a policeman on the 1st of September in Bamenda, creating a little bit of disorder in some part of the city, mainly at the level of Commercial Avenue. Or in those many terrorist acts, the instruments that were used, in most of the cases, is a motorbike. As a result of that, the SDO of Mezam, and the city mayor of Bamenda have chaired a meeting this morning with the representative of the motorbike system in the headquarters of the Northwest region. And after that meeting, they have came out with resolution to ban the circulation of motorbike in certain parts of the city of Bamenda. I would like to appeal to the citizens of Bamenda to support, like they have started doing it long ago, the decision taken by the city mayor and the SDO, implement it, and they are also expected, they have called to also give their full and loyal support to other measures that has been dictated by the head of state, both to the administration and to the security services, to bring back long-lasting peace in the Northwest region.
These elections are a legal provision. The most recent law adopted on decentralization and local development talks about these elections taking place, and besides, don't forget, the major national dialogue did recommend strongly that in the Northwest and Southwest, a special status should be granted. For that special status to be given significance, meaning, and for it to be real, they have to be, the regional assemblies or regional councils have to be functional. They have to go functional. But the regional assemblies can only go functional through elections, because we live in a state of law and the Constitution provides for that. So in spite of the concerns, and there are many concerns, it's not just the insecurity, there are many concerns. We have the pandemic, corona, the COVID-19 pandemic. There are concerns on a daily basis, but don't forget, in a state of law, we go with what the law says. The problems in Corsica, for example, have never stopped our big partner, the French Republic, from having elections. The problems in Catalonia have never stopped our big partner, Spain, from having elections. The problems in Casamance never stopped our brotherly country, Senegal, from having elections. The problems in Eastern Congo or Katanga have never stopped Congo Democratic Republic from having elections.
This is the timing that my departure from Cameroon, and I came to Mimeza to renew my gratitude in terms of all the cooperation and the very good and friendly collaboration which I assured during my 3.5 years stay in Cameroon. So I am very satisfied with the very good result of the cooperation of the promotion for the small and medium enterprise, medium-sized enterprises through the Kaizen approach.
More than 800 enterprises benefited from their trainings. We also had the opportunity to train hundreds of Cameroonian consultants who are now disseminating the Kaizen method in our enterprises. And we believe that this is showing really the importance that the Japanese government through the JICA attaches to Cameroon development, because each enterprise benefiting from this project improves its productivity by 40%.
You're welcome back. So, Prof, in some few words, what are some immediate actions that government should take now that will open the way to peace and normalcy in the two Anglophone regions of the country?
You know the Anglophone fighters, who you call them separatists, they have a leadership. And that leadership is in the diaspora and in Kondengi, right? You cannot ignore them. That's number one. If you remember, South Africa solved its own problems while they negotiated with a prisoner. Despite the problems we have had over these 4 years, we cannot deny that the Anglophone or the Northwest and Southwest don't have a leadership. They have a leadership. And that leadership is both in government, and people like ourselves, and out of government. Those in the diaspora, how much have they been involved in the process of resolving the crisis? How many of those in prison are involved in the negotiation of resolving this issue? What I'm saying, those in the diaspora and those out, as well as those in government, are critical components of a solution for the future. I remember the Prime Minister yesterday, was it yesterday or the day before? He mentioned the role of the diaspora. That means government is talking to the people in diaspora. But they should also continue to talk with those in jail here. Those are the ones much closer.
At the same time, there are some Cameroonians who call themselves indomitable patriots, who are urging the United States and other countries to arrest the secessionist leaders and send them back to Cameroon to be jailed. Or
you know, the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest has created so many little groupings, each of them with their own idea, attempting to see if their own philosophical approach to the issue will provide a solution. You've forgotten the women. Those are women, the women's group.
The Northwest, Southwest Women's Task Force.
Yes, it's a very powerful group. Women give life, and they don't want to see life being destroyed. So they got themselves together. They're telling us. Because who is in the battlefront? The men. So that is another group. All these various groups, whoever is responsible in piecing together a solution for the future, cannot neglect these groups. You cannot. They have their own idea. They may be able to contribute to the final solution, but we should not ignore them. The young people as well. There's one cry. The young people are saying they have been left out, and that is why they're in the bush. Right?
And those who are not in the bush are saying those who are out there,
those who are not in the bush,
happenings in the country should be
those
arrested,
who are not in the bush,
arresting them and bringing back into the country, trying them and jailing them, like what happened to Sisi Kwayuktabe in Nigeria and so on. Will it help in any way?
In doing what?
Arresting those who are the secessionist leaders abroad.
What I'm saying, what I've been saying is that
back home, like Sisi Kwayuktabe and the other 9 who were arrested in neighboring Nigeria and brought back in jail.
What I'm saying is that there was a period in the struggle when people were arrested and brought to Yaoundé. Right? They don't arrest anymore. They prefer to kill them. Right? The few who are out in the street, young people, they're all over. Let me take my own division, where during the initial period of the crisis, 300 bikes were taken out from Boyo and burnt. Those bikes were used by the young people. Where are they? They're either in the bush or they have come to Bamenda and gone to other parts to be able to survive. Those are the young people who are asking us, when will this come to an end? We need to stop this killings. We need to. And one scandalizing fact, people kill Steve poking fun at me, that what happened in Sangmanema or Bolova, where people rose against the Bamneke, destroyed property, nobody was ever arrested. Same thing if it happened in Baminda in those early days, they'll be down here. No. Distributed justice, social justice. And let me state this. This country belongs to all of us. Doesn't belong to a few. The fact that we have a multiplicity of cultures that over these years we have been trying to merge, to learn, and emerge with something that represents all of us. The super cultures, English and French cultures, are all part of the heritage that we have received from whomever. We should integrate them.
We should be a blessing and not a curse.
Exactly.
All right. In the midst of all these, the President of the Republic decides to set the pace for the regional elections. What do you think about that?
In the first place, for the regional elections in the Northwest and Southwest will produce the same results that we saw in the February parliamentary and council elections. That's a foregone conclusion. The other thing which I am not comfortable with is the definition of the number of regional councillors. The Northwest is going to have 70 or 90. Are these numbers built on the principle of population representation, or they are arbitrarily defined? Because take one region whose population is not half of the population of Mezam. Half. All those their divisions. You put them 77 and multiply. They have better representation in parliament than the 2 parliamentary seats from Mezam, when Mezam represents 400 and 500 people. So sometimes we onlookers are asking the questions. Those numbers are decided on the basis of what?
But the electoral code indicates that as far as divisional representatives or the members of the regional councils are concerned, each division should have at least one. So if a division, each subdivision should have at least one. So if a division has 5 subdivisions,
that is,
there will be at least 5.
I take with you, but if you go back and redefine this before, because there are places you call divisions which are not half of a subdivision. Ginicom, for example, where we have a subdivision with the same amount of population, they have a division. And the population, they have the subdivided. No, this is just some of the things that when people look and analyze, the people feel that they are being, they are missing out on them. But what I'm saying is that distributive justice is based on reality, is based on facts, is based on figures, and we must attempt to live up to those principles.
Opposition politicians like the national chairman of the Social Democratic Front, John Fundi, the national chairman of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, the CPP, the PAP, and all the other political party leaders think that it is not proper to organize the regional elections in this context. John Fundi in particular says that it's going to be another expression of the marginalization of Anglophones. It's going to aggravate the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest.
With regards to Fundi, I think if I had the leeway to talk to him, I should have told him to shut up.
Why?
Because he should never have called for parliamentary and council elections. We came to it. I mean, the SDF stood for parliamentary and council elections. Right? Now, this next step of the regional council is a follow-up of that. Therefore, your principle at the base, we define virtually the electorate for the regional council through the parliamentary and council election. You should be able to just step back. Because the process has to continue. Now you have people like Kamto who right from the beginning said no. They were not going in, right? If they say they are not for the regional elections, that will be a follow-up of their previous statements, right? But one thing which some of those politicians who didn't go for elections and who today are handicapped is that they are out of the political game for the next 5 years. And probably the best stand for them is say no. But SDF from the beginning said, we are going. Now we have got to a point, SDF lost virtually all its representation in the Northwest, right? And the Southwest. So there is nothing to fight for. And preemptively, the senatorial elections in a couple of years, SDF is out.
What are the stakes of the regional elections?
You see, the regional elections are important if we create the regional houses and give them powers. If they don't have powers and they are still being manipulated by the centralized system of government, we will never get anywhere. First and foremost, will those regional councils have the capacity to mobilize resources, design projects, execute them, and directly serve the people? The answer is no. The governors, prefects, and all of them are there. See in the council elections, who were sitting there?
But the new decentralization could give them a kind of supervisory...
It was there before. It's just another term. Before this thing came out, the DOs and the governors were supervisory authority, and they continue to be. They are going to determine what your budget is. Where do your funds come from? Just take the state of Calabar, or River State. I was surprised and mesmerized from what I heard. Where the governor is elected, He comes and transforms the state, building road, building economic structures. And when you, it's amazing. But that is not what we are going to have. You have a few of them, chiefs, and those elected. Tell me, none of them have passed. They will still wait for the central government to send them money.
Would there be any difference between the northwest and the southwest regions with regards to the special status and the other regions, the other regions?
I don't think. The way things are going, this or our francophone brothers and regions are profiting from the attempt to appease and to create structures that resemble the pre-72 West Cameroon. They are profiting from that. Take the councils, the city councils, right? They removed government delegates, did they not?
They did.
All over the country, it wasn't just for
Northwest and Southwest.
And the removal of those government delegates was simply because Anglophones didn't like it. That is not the way our cities were governed, by appointed people. So they removed the government delegates and told them to go to elections. Now you have elected city councillors, city mayors, elected. Well, they won it through a ballot box. But the problem is, if you talk to any of them, they're still waiting for the central authority to provide them resources. Basically, so centralization, decentralization is an empty word. It's decentralized on the basis, on paper, but the powers still rely on those who control the system.
Professor Paul Kui, member of the Constitutional Council, thanks for accepting to be our guest in this edition of The Insight.
Thank you. Thanks for...
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today.
Est-ce que tes gencives font mal?
Oui.
Est-ce que ton dentifrice contient de la sauge, eucalyptus, myrrhe, camomille?
Tout ça dans un seul dentifrice?
Oui, essaie Colgate Herbal. Contient les meilleures herbes de la nature et la technologie Colgate Fluor pour des dents fortes et des gencives saines.